So we are now on Roverandom Section 4. Last time we ended with Section 3 where Roverandom and the Moondog had just escaped from the Great White Dragon, which the wizard had stopped with some gooey black spell. So that's where we continue from now. The next day, the man in the moon looked at Roverandom and said, "That was a narrow squeak. You seem to have explored the white side pretty well for a young dog. I think when you have got your breath back, it will be time for you to visit the other side." "Can I come too?" asked the moon dog. "It wouldn't be good for you," said the man, "and I don't advise you to. You might see things that would make you more homesick than fire and chimney stacks, and that would turn out as bad as dragons." So first off here we have narrow squeak, right, which just refers to the very narrow escape, this close escape from the dragon. I talk about there. And then chimney stacks, of course, are like giant kind of round towers that smoke come out of that you would find at like old factories and places long ago. So the moondog isn't coming along. If you remember earlier, the moondog talked about when he was back on Earth and he thought of the smoke as making him homesick. So the trip to the other side of the moon is going to make him homesick, so the man in the moon says he can't come along. The moondog did not blush, because he could not, and he did not say anything. But he went and sat down in a corner and wondered how much the old man knew of everything that went on, and everything that was said too. Also, for a little while he wondered what exactly the old man meant. But that did not bother him long. He was a light-hearted fellow. Okay, so after the man in the moon tells him that he can't come, it says he did not blush. Blush, of course, is when your cheeks go red because you're embarrassed. But of course, he's a dog. Dogs don't blush, and because he didn't care, right? So, um, and they talk about the dog like kind of wondering what does the man in the moon mean, because the last time when the moon dog talked about chimney stacks and being homesick, he was very far away from the tower. So the dog is wondering like the how did the man in the moon know about that? But then it says he didn't really worry about it because he was lighthearted. He was a lighthearted fellow, which means the moon dog he wasn't serious. He wasn't like thinking deeply in things. He was more like happy-go-lucky, like, silly kind of dog, right? Fellow, of course, just means like person, character, like fellow. Oh, he's a good fellow. Usually used in a positive sense when you say something good about somebody. So, oh, he's a trustworthy fellow. Okay. As for Roverandom, when he had got his breath back a few days later, the man in the moon came and whistled for him. Then down and down they went together, down the stairs and into the cellars, which were cut inside the cliff, and had small windows looking out of the side of the precipice over the wide places of the moon, and then down secret steps that seemed to lead right under the mountains, until after a long while they came into a completely dark place and stopped. Though Roverandom's head went on turning giddily after the miles of corkscrewing downwards. Right, so they're going to the other side of the moon, and the way they're doing it is they're going down into the tower, and they're going down into the cellars, and so we learn here that the cellars are cut into the cliff of the moon, and they say here it's looking out of the precipice. The precipice is like the edge of the cliff, right? Like right before you fall off, over the wide places of the moon. And then they go even deeper than that. So this tower keeps going down into the ground, even past the tower. So they're going and they're on stairs, and the stairs, it's a round tower, so the stairs keep going round and round in a spiral, and it's getting darker and darker. And it says here, Roverandom's head went on turning giddily, which means he got dizzy, right? Because he's turning in a circle, going down and down all these flights of stairs, and it's corkscrewing. You can imagine the stairs spiraling down in a circle, kind of looks like a corkscrew that you would open a wine bottle with. In complete darkness, the man in the moon shone palely, all by himself like a glowworm, and that was all the light they had. It was quite enough, though, to see the door by, a big door in the floor. This the old man pulled up, and as it was lifted, darkness seemed to well up out of the opening like a fog, so that Roverandom could no longer see even the faint glimmering of the man through it. "Down you go, good dog," said the voice out of the blackness. And you won't be surprised to be told that Roverandom was not a good dog and would not budge. So they're very deep into this tower. So they're actually underground now. These stairs keep going underground in the moon. It's completely dark, and there's no lights except for the man in the moon himself, who is shining palely, meaning very lightly, not very brightly. And he's a wizard, of course, so he's making himself shine so they can see. And he's shining like a glowworm. And if you've ever seen a glowworm, it's an insect that it's kind of like glow in the dark, like a little green glow in the dark. It doesn't actually make lots of light, but it does. It itself is bright, but it doesn't spread a lot of light around it. Then they open this door in the floor, and then it says darkness seems to well up. So you can kind of imagine like when you have a glass that is full, and then you keep pouring things in it, and the water keeps boiling out of it. That's kind of what they're meaning here. And the darkness, it seems like the darkness comes out of the hole. Right, so it's even darker. So they're going into this door is to an even darker place, right, than they've already gone into. There's a simile there, of course, like a fog. So the darkness is coming out like a fog, so it's so dark now that they can't even see the faint glimmering. The faint meaning very, very small. This isn't faint like someone passing out. This is faint as in very hard to see. Glimmering is like very small shining. So they can't even see the man in the moon's glimmering. It's completely dark. And then it just says, "Down you go, good dog." So the man in the moon says, "Go down," right? And he calls him a good dog, like you would call a dog, when you tell a dog to do something. But Roverandom would not budge, right? Meaning he would not move even a little bit. So he's disobeying of course, he doesn't know what's down there. Like he doesn't want to go down the scary black hole. He backed into the furthest corner of the little room and set his ears back. He was more frightened of that hole than of the old man. But it was not any good. The man in the moon simply picked him up and dropped him plump into the black hole. And as he fell and fell into nothing, Roverandom heard him calling out, already far above him, "Drop straight and then fly on with the wind. Wait for me at the other end." That ought to have comforted him, but it did not. Roverandom always said afterwards that he did not think even falling over the world's edge could have been worse. So Roverandom doesn't want to go down the hole, and then he moves to the corner of the room, so he's moving back, he's getting away from the hole, and then he puts his ears back because he's afraid, right? Like some dogs and cats do. But then the man in the moon just picks him up. And he says, so the man in the moon says, "Drop straight and then fly with the wind." But he says that ought to is an old way of saying that should have comforted him, comforted as in made him feel better. But it did not, right? So Roverandom is dropping down this giant black hole. And that, anyway, it was the nastiest part of all his adventures, and still made him feel as if he had lost his tummy whenever he thought of it. You can tell he is still thinking of it when he cries out and twitches in his sleep on the hearth rug. All the same, it came to an end. After a long while, his falling gradually slowed down, until at last he almost stopped. The rest of the way he had to use his wings, and it was like flying up through a big chimney, luckily with a strong draught helping him along. Jolly glad he was when he got at last to the top. So he says it's the nastiest part of all his adventures, the worst part he means there. And he says it makes him lose his tummy, which means like makes him nauseous and queasy and makes him want to throw up whenever he thinks of it. Then it says you can tell he's still thinking of it when he twitches in his sleep. If you've ever seen a dog, when a dog's having a dream and sleeping really deeply, it kind of like moves and its head kind of goes from side to side, and sometimes its little paws go. It's almost like it's running and fighting in its sleep. It's really cute. So obviously he still has bad nightmares about this fall, and it's a very bad memory for him. Then it says when he's asleep on the hearth rug. A hearth is a fireplace, and a rug, of course, is a carpet or a mat. So it's the carpet in front of the fireplace where he would sleep and then have these nightmares. Yeah. Um, so he's falling down this hole pretty fast, and he can't see anything. And then he starts to slow down. Gradually means slowly over a long time, until at last he almost stops, and then he actually has to fly up the other side. So this black hole keeps going, but luckily there's a strong draft. A draft is like a wind, a cool wind that's helping him, and and then he's jolly glad. He's very happy when he gets back to the top. So what's actually happened here is he's gone through the middle of the moon, right? So when he gets to the middle, he falls to the middle where gravity is in the middle, and then he doesn't fall anymore, and then he actually has to go out the other side. So he's going through the middle of the moon here. There he lay, panting at the edge of the hole at the other end, waiting obediently and anxiously for the man in the moon. It was a good while before he appeared, and Roverandom had time to see that he was at the bottom of a deep, dark valley, ringed around with low, dark hills. Black clouds seemed to rest upon their tops, and beyond the clouds was just one star. Suddenly, the little dog felt very sleepy. A bird in some gloomy bushes nearby was singing a drowsy song that seemed strange and wonderful to him. And after the little dumb birds of the other side, to which he had got used to, he shut his eyes. Okay, so he's panting, which is like dogs do, right? Because he's tired. He just fell through the entire moon, right? He had to fly up from the middle of the moon to the other side of the moon, so he's tired, right? And then he says he waits obediently, which means he obeys. He does what the man in the moon said, because the man in the moon said, you have to wait for me when you get to the other side. So this time he actually does listen, and he is a good dog. Anxiously is kind of nervously, right? Because he wants the wizard to show up because he's afraid. He's there alone in a place he's never been before. So he's anxiously, like anxious means you want something to happen now. You want the wizard to be there now, but he has to wait. So he's here, and then it just kind of describes what he sees. So the other side of the moon is very dark, and he's in a valley in between some hills. And there's black clouds and just one star, so it's very dark. And then he starts getting sleepy, and there's a bird that's in some gloomy bushes. Gloomy is kind of dark. And then he sings a drowsy song, which is something that makes you sleepy, right? That seems strange and wonderful to him. Okay, and then he falls asleep. And remember, the little birds on the other side of the moon didn't have wings and didn't sing at all. So he's kind of happy to hear a bird on this side, of the dark side of the moon, that can actually sing. So he's kind of happy about that. Wake up, you doglet, called a voice, and Roverandom bounced up just in time to see the man climbing out of the hole on a silver rope, which a large gray spider, much larger than himself, was fastening to a tree close by. The man climbed out. Thank you, he said to the spider, and now be off. And off the spider went, and was glad to go. There are black spiders on the dark side, poisonous ones, if not as large as the monsters on the white side. They hate anything white or pale or light, and especially pale spiders, which they hate like rich relations that pay infrequent visits. So first off, so the wizard is coming out of the hole on the silver rope, which obviously the spider made for him. So he must have convinced the spider to do that. And then after the spider helps him get out of the hole, he just tells him, be off, which means go away, get out of here. And then they just describe that on the dark side of the moon, there's black spiders that are poisonous and smaller. And then it says the black spiders hate the light things from the other side of the moon. And they also hate the pale, meaning the white spiders, which they hate like rich relations that pay infrequent visits. Rich relations is rich family. Pay infrequent visits, which means they don't visit often. So it's kind of a strange simile there. He's comparing it like, oh, they don't like them because it's their rich family, but the rich family doesn't come often enough so that they can, spoil them and take their money. Yeah, so let's go on. The gray spider dropped back down the rope into the hole, and a black spider dropped out of the tree at the same moment. Now then, cried the old man to the black spider, come back there. That is my private door, and don't you forget it. Just make me a nice hammock from those 2 yew trees and I'll forgive you. It's a longish climb down and up through the middle of the moon, he said to Roverandom, and I think a little rest before they arrive would do me good. So the gray spider helped the man in the moon to get through the hole, but then there's a black spider that obviously lives on the dark side that wants to go through the hole to the light side. But then he says, now then, which means, stop that, don't do that, all right? Come back there. So he says that's my private door, which means it's only for the man in the moon's use. He doesn't want just any creature using that. And then he tells the black spider to make him a hammock. A hammock is like a bed that's a piece of cloth that hangs between 2 trees where people can sleep on. You might have seen it on beaches and things. Or maybe you have one at home. And then he just describes the climb to Roverandom and says now he's tired. So that's why he asks the black spider to make the hammock for him, because he wants to sleep now, because he just climbed through the middle of the moon, which is very tiring. He also describes here, he says the longest climb down and up, because he climbs down into the middle and then up the other side. Right? It's kind of confusing, but that's, I mean, if you think about a planet being round or a moon being round, going into it is down and going out of it is up. So first he goes down to the middle and then up the other side. They are very nice, but they need a good deal of energy. Of course, I could take to wings. I wear them out so fast. Also, it would mean widening the hole, as my size in wings would hardly fit, and I'm a beautiful rope climber. Now, what do you think of this side? The man continued. Dark with a pale sky, while the other was pale with a dark sky, eh? So when the man in the moon says they, he means the climb, the climb through the middle of the moon. And then he says he climbs. He doesn't use wings because he wears them out too fast. Because he's of course very big, so his magical wings, wouldn't last long enough to go through the middle of the moon. Also, it would mean widening the hole, right? Because he's going to be too big, like a man with wings, so the hole is too narrow. And he says he's a beautiful rope climber. He doesn't mean he himself is beautiful. He means beautiful as in his climbing. He's good at climbing. And then, of course, he says, now, what do you think of this side? And so they're on the other side of the moon now, and it's dark while the other side is light. Okay, so that's the end of section 4. You can now go do the assignment quiz.